Hello, this is Dale Matthews. Welcome to our show. I'm the time and the place, and here is Mr. Manners.
Yes. My mother always lectured me about that. Never caught hold. I'm Mike Jones. Good evening.
Hello, Mike, and welcome to our show. We keep track of political things in this area, in case you didn't know. And one of the very controversial matters is, what are we going to do about people who are fully within the law to grow marijuana? Mike and I don't. He grows tomatoes. Same thing. And what do we do about people who feel inconvenienced for about 3 months of the year, up to 4 months of the year, by the smell of such a thing?
Right.
If you move next to a gas station, you're going to expect that it's going to smell. And if you move next to an airport, you're expected there's going to be some kind of noise and buzzing and that kind of stuff. You now live in some kind of home that's your dream home, and people move in next to you. And they're growing a legal crop, legal crop, and they might be putting fertilizer on it, which doesn't smell so nice for a while, but hopefully not for months and months and months. But if they're growing marijuana, some people find that smell to be pretty offensive. Mike?
Yeah,
I didn't mean to say it that way, Mike, but you know what I mean.
Yes. And luckily I grow tomatoes and other vegetables and stuff, which don't stink at all. And so they're not a problem to anybody unless they don't like how they look over my fence, to which I say, where you can put it. Listen, this is a legitimate claim on the part of people. If somebody moves in next door and starts growing marijuana, and listen, I can already feel the hair on people's backs going up.
Yes.
Listen, okay. And some of the same people that are going to get all nasty about this will go crazy about Monsanto or GMOs or something like that, but they don't care at all about this situation. But this is an actual a legitimate claim. If I got something that is ruining my quality of life next door for those months of the year, that's legitimate claim. That's damage that's being done to me. And so if I have something to say about it, I mean, there's going to be a legal matter there. Now, right now already, this has only been legal for a very short period of time, but on the forms that you fill out when you're selling a home, you must disclose anything that you know that may potentially bring the value of the property down or anything like that. And if there's a grow operation going on next door, by the way, that's already one of the predetermined forms on there. It's predetermined lines on this form. So obviously, to many people, there is a perception that the house is of lesser value, or there is negatives connected with that particular type of operation. And you can say whatever you want, but as soon as the perception of somebody, especially a prospective buyer of my house, feels that it's worth less or is undesirable, period, because of something else that is going on next door, that's an issue. And that's a legitimate issue. So now I understand for all you people who think this is going to rescue the economy, that's fantastic. But just as anything that you do must not negatively impact somebody else, this too must fit into that category.
Well, let's suppose that the people live next door to you have a pool, just like you have a pool. And they invite every neighborhood kid to come and play in that pool all day long, especially over the summer vacation. And the kids are over there from everywhere, and maybe even including your grandkids or something, but kids are there. And they're just making noise from 9 to 5, not at 11 o'clock at night, all day long. Right. And you object because you and your wife would prefer to sit in the back and kind of rock in your rocking chair and have a quiet time
Right.
Do you have a legitimate complaint about the noise in the middle of the day?
I believe that there are clearly laid out guidelines for that. I know that, spending a lot of time in the construction trade, I knew that if I showed up and began work that made noise before a specific time, and everything that I did make noise, you could potentially have a problem. I went out of my way to try and be accommodating to people and not, I don't need to listen. When you're a building contractor, you have enough problems to deal with. You don't need problems with complaints. But as long as I'm within the law, I have to get my work done. And in the middle of the day, I think it's like after 7 a.m. or something like that, you can rock and roll, So,
Mike is that kind of person. Imagine, however, that you had a deck on the back of your house, and your neighbors had a deck on the back of their house, and you got new neighbors that moved in, and they're smokers. There are a lot of people who are offended, and some people say somewhat sickened. Okay, it's your life, by the smell of cigarette smoke.
Right.
And you don't, and we're talking legal, okay? We're not talking about marijuana, which is also legal, okay? But it's cigarette smoke, and you'd really prefer that your neighbors don't hang by their pool or on their deck with this cigarette smoke blowing all day long over to your deck, which is now useless to you because you don't want to sit there like in the middle of a casino where it smells. I couldn't believe when I first went to a casino here in Oregon, I went, this place reeks.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
It's a different world now.
Yeah.
Can you object? Can you object to cigarette smoke on your neighbor's balcony?
Yes. But you know what? I believe that probably, especially out in the county, is going to become an issue that you're going to have to use diplomacy with your neighbor to deal with, because the sheriff department ain't going to do nothing about it. They're not going to come out on a matter like that. You're going to have to now, but out in the county, typically homes are further apart than that. And, if I'm 100 yards away from somebody and they're complaining about my cigarettes, I got a couple of words for them. I don't care. That's not a problem for me. So,
well, that's what this show is about. Time, place, and manner. Where does the county government step in? The state government has rules. Now the county government, the people that we've got running this county government, they just can't stand not being able to have some kind of influence over what you're doing, especially one person. And who would that be? Mike.
I'd say Cheryl Walker. She's the biggest busybody on the board. This hasn't even. Has this manifested itself as an issue already? Perhaps it has. I'm not privy to complaints that are taking place in the county right now. I would assume that most of what they're talking about is in the county, and most of the parcels out in the county are probably larger parcels, unless you're talking about Cave Junction, where you have quarter acre lots, or even smaller for that matter.
Well, we're going to hear about how many there are. And when we play this tape, a couple of things to remember is apparently smell is, there certainly has to be some kind of sociological impact of this as well. Some people are going to be offended by the smell because they're just offended by the smell. And others are going to be offended by it because it's not the way they were raised. Okay. Or not the kind of world that they used to live in. The world is.
Yeah, but that's different. Well,
it's still offensive to them.
Okay. However, if you smell something and, it's obviously an offensive odor, if it's just mildly, or you just happen to know that it's going on next door and are, manufacturing an issue based on your moral objection to it, that's entirely different.
It's just impossible to prove, and nobody has a meter that they can stick up your nose and figure out. They just can't.
Yes, but you could come over to somebody's house and I think reasonable people, you could bring a jury over there, and it may come to that where you have a court case going on, a legal suit between two parties, and you'll bring a jury over there and go, this is it right here, and I mean that's pretty easy to quantify, I think.
This must have happened when people, I hope I'm not going too far afield here, when people start switching over from horses to horseless carriages. Horses smell. I mean, the stuff that comes out of the back of them smells, okay?
Right.
And automobiles, especially the early ones, they really smell too, and they make a lot of noise. And there was a lot of conflicts between skittish and cars. And so people certainly objected to their neighbors having one thing or another. Mike?
Yeah, and there were some really bizarre laws. Some were so bizarre that like if you were driving your car and you encountered a horse or people on a horse, you were to pull over and dismantle your vehicle as quickly as possible. And of course, probably nobody ever did that because, I mean, think of that, dismantling it so that it didn't freak the horse out. But that's
doing that. But one of my favorite is if you're listening to the radio, you must pull your car over to the side because it's too distracting. That sounds a little.
Yes, right. And I think that's going a little overboard because, I've been listening to the radio in my car for many, 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 many years. And
he texts while he texts people while he's driving too, with blindfolded.
On two phones with one in each hand.
Right. Well, you got two hands.
While I'm driving with my knee.
Yes, right. Okay, so that's one thing to remember. The other to remember is no matter what they say here, they've said in previous meetings in the little back room, we don't have residential zones in the county. I know that sounds a little strange. What? No, it's rural residential. We're a rural county. We have rural residential. So when you hear residential zones, don't be put off by it. We know what they mean. They mean rural residential. In most cases, RR5.
I'm usually really put off by rural residential. That really makes me angry.
Yeah, here we go. Now we're going to listen to what they said in the little back room. This is a pretty controversial topic. There are a number of people who are going to be very, very interested in this conversation they're having for a variety of reasons on both sides of the fence.
Mm-hmm. Walker was interested in responding to some of the odor impacts that neighbors of people who are growing marijuana are, complaining to the county, and we get the same kinds of counties. So we discussed the possibility of requiring that marijuana grows in residential parcels that are zoned residential be in structures indoors.
Really? That they be in structures indoors. Who's at the table here? Let's go from left to right. Cheryl Walker, you recognize that there's the secretary in the back. That's Linda McElmurray. Mm-hmm. There's Keith Eck. There's Simon Hare. Coming around the corner, that's the planning director. There's in Burgundy is the woman who is an assistant to Wally Hicks. This is Grace Zilverberg in the middle. She is with planning. And then there's Wally Hicks, the legal counsel. And she just announced it's not Simon Hare's plan. It's not the commissioner's plan. It is a suggestion from planning that they require anyone who is on a lot that's smaller than 10 acres, that they must have their grow inside.
On smaller than 10 acres. Is this based on some sort of science about,
no,
the propagation of these, smells?
No, and there's no way to measure that kind of stuff, and they're just shooting in the dark, as a matter of fact. Listen to more of what they have to say. You can stop it any time you like, Mike.
Basically, unless it's over 10 acres. we had IT do a kind of just a little count for us to see actually how many are, how many parcels are in residential, and how many of those parcels are over 10 acres. So, if you're interested. So basically, there's there's over 14,000 parcels that are in the residential zones. Of those, there are 833 that are over 10 acres, and that amounts to about 5% of the total parcels. You get into acres, then of course, if they're over 10 acres, they wind up being more than that, winds up being about 22% of the acreage is in parcels over 10 acres. So that's.
Now, did you catch that, you guys? What she's saying is there's a lot more parcels, obviously, than there are acres.
Mm-hmm.
But I was kind of surprised that so many of them are small. We're talking mostly RR5, rural residential 5 acres.
Yeah, and that's what my property is, and everybody on my block is the same, with exception of a couple which are half of that, 2.5 acres. And so 10, I would say that's the exception around here, in terms of size of parcels, and this is a subdivision here. So there are clearly a lot of places where there are much larger parcels. But I'd say the number of people that live on as much as 10 acres is pretty small. And what did she said? She said 833 10-acre parcels. What was the lesser than that? I missed
they were talking about acreage versus parcels.
Oh, I see.
Acreage versus parcels. Right. Something like 22% of the acres, but it's a lot less for the parcels, which of course is a different division of the whole thing. Okay. So we've spoken before about how important the planning department is. If you think that you would wish that we had more business in our area, more economic prosperity, this is not going to happen without it being approved by the planning department. It sounds like a boring department. It is not boring, because it holds the keys to economic prosperity, whether it's timber, or if it's mining, or if it's botanical gardens, or if it's growing marijuana. All of these things are regulated as to time, place, and manner. They hold all the keys to economic prosperity in this county.
Okay.
The planning department. Yeah. Okay.
The planning restriction department.
That's essentially true.
Yeah.
That's where the commissioners get criticized for saying, you're not encouraging this legal crop. You're not encouraging this thing that could be an economic boon to our area. Cheryl Walker's answer, and the other two aren't disputing her, is, well, none of that money goes directly into the county government. That's right. All it does is go directly into the pockets of our local citizens, who then are more prosperous, and the whole place, supposedly, the theory is, everybody does a little bit better because they're going to buy more pie and more tires.
Right. Which is something that you're supposed to care about, Cheryl. She's
made that very clear. Whether it's gold miners, this is what gold miners and marijuana miners have, and not school miners, but what they have in common. Cheryl has said very clearly, quite bluntly, because gold mining and marijuana don't put money directly into the pockets of the county.
Well, what the hell does, really? I mean,
come on now. Only one thing does, whether it's broken into 4 parts. Yeah.
Property taxes.
That's all.
But that's so stupid. More wealthy people equals people buying nicer properties and improving the properties that they have, so they can be assessed for more, which puts money in the pocket of the county. They should be barred from mentioning that, hey, that doesn't put money in my pocket. Shut up. It's not supposed to put money in your pocket. But
would you please run for County Commissioner Mike Jones? This is what we've been saying.
That's just insanity.
They absolutely don't get it.
So remind me, who is this? Who is this gal in the purple?
She's this is Grace Zilverberg.
Okay.
And the purple, no. The lady speaking is in black. You'll see in a moment. And she's planning. Right, it's the order that they set down, and the lady in burgundy is they're separated for some reason. The lady in burgundy,
but the lady that's giving the specified information about parcels and lots and all that kind of stuff, that gal, who's that?
She's from planning.
She's from planning. Okay,
right, and they've been asked by Cheryl to work up some kind of plan about how to regulate time, place, and manner of marijuana. Now, what's going to happen on Wednesday is they're going to put something on the weekly business session they already have that's about the way it's worded is something like the wonderfulness of encouraging economic growth in our area, blah blah. Okay, and that's about opening up more commercial areas to growing. Whatever. Okay, it probably should have been done a long time ago. But what they're not going to put on the weekly business session agenda on this coming Wednesday is this subject. They're going to talk about this on Tuesday again in the little back room, and we're going to be there to see what it is they're saying. No matter what side of the argument, what side of the 8-foot fence you are on this, you're going to care about economic prosperity if you don't live next to somebody, or you're going to care about the smell, or you're going to care about the freedom, or you're going to care about something. Mm-hmm. And this is the suggestion that she's making. Keep in mind what this means is, well, if they put it inside of a building, well, doesn't that really solve the problem? No, because what kind of greenhouse has a completely sealed exterior where there's no air rushing through it? Come on.
Oh. None. Listen, they require incessant ventilation. So this would require a very expensive, filtered ventilation system, which I'm fairly aware here that they, I believe they have such a thing. And they're obviously going to need stuff like that for growing within the city limits because, I mean, you're right butt up next to each other.
Except that in the city, in Grants Pass City, they've made a rule that if you grow in a greenhouse, that's officially outdoors. It is? Yes, it's outdoors.
Yeah, but really, when it comes down to it, it's not going to make a bit of difference at all. If you're growing indoors, you have to get rid of that smell from inside the house. I mean, if you're living in the damn house, you're going to have to ventilate, and it's going to have to be a filter system. So I personally don't see the difference between the greenhouse situation. The only benefit to the greenhouse that they're apparently not allowing in the city is then you can use the sun as opposed to lights all the time.
There's the big issue. Mike put his finger right on it. You put your finger on the sun. Ouch. Okay, and that is what they're doing. What they're suggesting here is you could grow in a barn. You could grow in your house. You could grow in a greenhouse. But they're essentially cutting people off from the free sunshine for growing their crops. Imagine if you were a farmer and you were growing tomatoes, as Mike does. But Mike, you cannot ever grow your tomatoes outdoors ever again. You must always grow them under lighting.
Oh, spare me. I wouldn't do it.
Hey, you can't have free sunshine. What's the matter with you? This is not a direct contribution to the bottom line of the county government.
Yeah, and listen, I understand the outrage about that. Listen. A lot of people were outraged about this. I mean, I'm sure Rika Brown, we could have her on the program. She could go on and on and on about, the growing restrictions within the city limits. I'm sure she feels very put out by that. And you know what? Listen, is it unreasonable to expect that maybe somebody will pursue some strain of marijuana that is just as potent but doesn't stink as bad?
Now you're talking. We've suggested this. You guys never suggest any solutions. Do you ever watch the show? Actually watch the show? absolutely that, and they're apparently, I've been told, I don't know, I'm not an expert on this, that there are strains that are less smelly, but apparently they are less potent and therefore, I suppose, less profitable.
Okay. All right. Well, then you can grow those in areas where you're a little closer together. I mean, I just
right. That's right. I guess.
Why, well, here's the thing, though.
Because they want solutions, maybe.
Yeah, I would want to know, are they coming up with this because there's an issue that they're trying to solve? Or are they just coming up with this because they read somewhere or somebody said that, hey, this is something that we're doing, so why don't you do the same? Why don't we just wait until we find out how much of an issue this is? 5 acres is, listen, I got, probably 75 yards in between my house and my neighbor, and in a situation like that, if I catch a whiff of the guy's pot plant every once in a while, I don't care about that. I mean, if it's omnipresent for 3 months, that's a whole different story.
And of course, it's the 3 nicest months of the year if you think hot weather is being nice. But what's happening. We all know what's happening. Cheryl Walker is receiving hundreds of telephone calls every hour.
Oh, come on.
Begging her not to have a voter spent. No, about the smell. That's what she's going to say. That is what she has said. She's getting these phone calls.
No. There's only about 50 that do that. The other 50 are begging for her to have 3453 enacted.
Yeah, that's right. Well, this is Cheryl's claim to fame. She gets all these phone calls and all this input, and she goes to the grocery store, and she can't walk. When she walks into the grocery store, they automatically put her on their shoulders and parade her around the room. She can never buy any groceries.
Yes.
Because people are stopping.
And the supermarket manager is yelling questions at her and praises of her over the PA system in the store. Yeah, it's really irritating.
I like the questions part. But
if you've ever been in Walmart when she's in there, it's really bad.
Yes. Well, you just stay away from that general area. Grace Silverberg is directly doing this because Cheryl Walker has said people are offended by the smell. And there are people offended by the smell. Okay, I'm not trying to downplay that, but a little bit. But anytime this stuff originates with these commissioners, especially with Cheryl, hold your nose, which fits the show.
You know what? I generally suspect these commissioners anytime they're doing something. I mean, I've seen enough from these people. If they're doing something, you need to be concerned about it.
This is one of the things we're going to be with the show. What's going to happen, okay? We all got a pretty good idea of what's going to happen. Come May, when the primary is over, we'll simply be watching these people for the following 6 months to try to keep track of the poison pill that they're going to try to force down our throats because they're on their way out.
Right.
And that will be the most important thing that we do to let you know. We're doing it now, but especially be important there. And you'll say, oh, now I really do understand what it is that they're doing, because we're going to be watching these characters and they're going to be trying to do, as Keith Eck tried to do with making it impossible for anyone to say that they're running for office. What, for the first time in Josephine County history at a weekly business session, because he's running for office and he doesn't want to hear. And so that was his poison pill that he inserted during the last part of his chairmanship. Now, Cheryl Walker is here, and she's going to have a legacy, by gosh, no matter what anybody says. And one of hers might be to leave a lingering smell. No, to force you out of the sunlight. Look, to me, now I'm on a rant. You shouldn't have started me. To me, the really ironic thing is Darren Fowler was the guy at the city council, the mayor, that was pushing the hardest for this idea of saying that marijuana should be grown indoors with lights. Mm-hmm. What is it that Darren Fowler does for a living? Follow the money. One of the biggest things that he does is install lighting systems.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that makes sense.
So this is why, one of the reasons why, I can't connect the dots, says Simon here. This is one of the reasons why Now, even a greenhouse is technically outdoors, according to the Grants Pass City Council. Who comes up with these ideas? It's their city council. It's their city lawyer, Mark Bartholomew. It was citizens who got the idea that said in the first thing that they passed it, that you couldn't possess marijuana either. You can't possess it. No, wait. This isn't 1962. They had to change it. And the lawyer didn't catch this. It took citizens to do it. The newspaper didn't catch it. The KJO didn't catch it. You know who caught it?
You know what? I think they're enamored of themselves, and they you know, they just don't spell check and proofread their own stuff. You know, probably.
If I'm doing like this, it probably seems I'm enamored of myself. But this is really not the right way to have to do things. That citizens have to catch this kind of stuff.
Yeah, your monitor agrees,
brother. Okay, all right. So more to the little back room. Here we go.
That was just to see what we have laid out there. So essentially, this just kind of tries to capture that particular thing for your discussion, and it winds up being under the 1, 2, 3 marijuana plants emit a strong odor, especially during the budding phase. Numerous residents have complained about this odor, and it may have an impact on public health. Therefore, it's ordered.
It may have what? What did she just say? Yeah.
Now, did she say that some people were complaining about this order, or did she say that people? Oh, odor. Oh,
this smell, this odor. Okay.
Okay.
But what else did she say? It may. It may have an impact on public health. What? And see, this is the problem.
Yeah, that's
when they head on down to Rootbury going, well, you know, that seems kind of reasonable. Yes, I can kind of understand that. Then they always have to do this. It could have an impact on public health.
Yeah, that's dumb. That's dumb. And listen, I mean, if you were a captive in an enclosed space and had to breathe that, it might have some effect on you. Maybe you'd have an allergic reaction to it or something, but I don't know. I mean, that's really kind of pushing.
They just can't help it. It's kind of like Larry Graves at the airport. They have a very nice, and we went, and it was very nice, and they had airport days, and there were hundreds of people there, and that was pretty cool. Now, he has to tell everybody in a public meeting there were thousands and thousands of people there. No, there weren't. Why would you do that? Why? And so Grace has to say, well, it may have an impact on public health. No, it won't. See, what that does is it casts the whole thing into a light where you're going, what? That's not true. There are legitimate reasons to be concerned, but public health?
Yeah, that's dumb. I'd be interested to, I think you got to take this on a case by case basis. I mean, if there, and listen, you've got Colorado, you've got Washington, you've got Oregon. Pretty soon here, there's going to be some guidelines as to how far away one needs to be from said pot grow, in order to escape the smell. And,
yes.
And as soon as those guidelines are in place, then you sort of have to come up with some sort of ordinance about that. I mean, as much as I hate for that to be the case, I think that you do have to do that. But
are we really in a society where neighbors cannot solve their problems? They need the government to come in and solve their problems for them?
Well, in many cases, yes. Listen, in the case of the smoking thing that you're talking about, I think generally speaking, you're probably only going to have an issue with that inside the city limits where people are right up next to one another. And if that's the case, you either talk to your neighbor or, you have the cops pay them a visit and say, hey, listen, whatever. Unfortunately, with this particular situation, because you're talking about maybe a large quantity of plants, and listen, I have not experienced this, noxious odor coming from this stuff. I have not. I've smelled marijuana in its budding stage before, and but I've never been like, wow, that is, I can't be near those plants or something, so I don't really understand it in that way. But listen, I haven't experienced it, so I can't really tell. But I mean, there is a legitimate claim here. If this is bothersome, if it's legitimately bothersome to people, then it does need to be addressed. But I really need to know more about it, is what I need to know.
Well, let's suppose that, honestly, let's just suppose that there were, in our county of 70,000 plus people, that there are 1,000 people, 1,000 families that are inconvenienced by the smell, or they just don't like the smell. Even if it's not making them, throw up or something, they don't like the smell because they don't want to think back to the 60s and concerts and stuff. That's what it makes me think of. I wasn't, but it was every concert I ever went to. It was there everywhere, especially outdoors, and they just don't like it. So it doesn't really matter, honestly. I don't think it matters whether it's physically making them ill or it just brings back bad memories or reminds them of helicopters flying over the Delta or whatever their deal is. They don't like it. Okay. So now, that being the case, whether or not you've personally experienced it, there are people who have. And now what is their solution? You say to them, look, would you please try to work it out with your neighbors? Like a barking dog or kids that are screaming while they're playing at the pool or whatever, the police would generally say, can you work it out with your neighbors? Can you go talk to them? Okay. Yeah. And there are people who don't want to confront their neighbors. And there are people who think that somebody else should take care of their problem. And there are those who have talked with the neighbors, and the neighbors are being, in their opinion, unreasonable.
Yeah. And in this particular case, this isn't like, firing up a skill saw at 6:30 in the morning. That's not what this is. This is that smell is there. And, maybe it's more intense in the heat of the day, or maybe you're only getting it a certain part of the day when prevailing winds are off of their property onto yours. Who knows? I mean, this can be pretty. You know what?
Who hasn't ridden through Central California and with the windows down, and you go by the onion fields? My gosh!
Yeah.
Either you feel like you eat a hamburger right now, or you roll up the windows.
Right. Or listen, you're driving down I-5, you're, down there, Grapevine area, and you're going through, and I forget I think it's Santanella or something down there. There's a huge feedlot, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of cattle out there. And man, you can smell that place 20 miles either side of it. Right. It is gnarly, and they must have some sort of special agreement with their neighbors, or they all go nose blind to it or something. I don't know how that works, but yeah.
Well, this is the county's attempt to do something about it, and they are suggesting that they cut these growers off from the sun. I just find it especially, I'm not saying I have all the answers, neither one of us does, but I find it especially amazing that a county and city government that are not really hot on the idea of sunshine on themselves and their law ability are cutting people off from the sunshine. It is, for me, a symbol of this government.
Okay. I think this is a simple legal issue. I mean, there has to be some guidelines developed if there hasn't been already, and then you just have to stick to them. I mean, unfortunately, that's where we're at in this situation, and pot growers are going to hate me for saying it. So what? Go, bite yourself or something. I don't care what you think.
Oh, that's nice.
No, really, you know what? It's and the same for people who want to quash pot growers. It's legal. Get over it. I have the same opinion towards them. No, this is obviously something. I'm libertarian in my conservatism.
Yes, okay? Exactly.
And
I am as well.
And that means you get to do whatever the hell you want to do. And as soon as it begins negatively impacting somebody else, you are over the line.
Absolutely. We must, in my opinion, that's the way it has to be. That's America. And I like to see people solving their problems. And when they really can't solve their problems, then they turn to government. Boy, that's the only.
And that's a bad thing, because you know what? Sooner or later they're coming for you. You know, sooner or later they're going to put the kibosh on whatever it is you love to do, and you know, that's because, you know, unfortunately, the federal government alone has more than doubled since the year 2000. Okay. And that's a mind blower to people, because I don't remember in the 90s thinking, boy, you know, if only the federal government were larger, you know, I probably thought it was too big by half then, you know, and certainly the same can be said for state and local stuff. And the only thing that's keeping the local on a short leash is the fact they don't have money to do anymore. If they had more money, this government would get as big as it possibly could.
Well, it reminds me of that very touching concept of the fellow that's on his deathbed, and he reaches up to his grandson. He said, you know, I sure wish I spent more time with my family, in the church, doing good works. No, I sure wish I spent more time at work. What? Yes. Nobody's going to say that. Well, the same thing here. Gosh, I just wish that government was bigger and forced to solve more of our problems for us.
Yes. Well,
what happened to hardy Americans that, well, we know what some of them used to do. They go over with a shovel and they teach their neighbor a lesson. You know, I'm either going to hit you over the head with it, or I'm going to bury you with it.
Yeah, but listen, and at that was probably a more civil time too, and because of the fact that we were, you know, we were all pretty hardy Americans, there was a little bit of more distance in between us as well, and we were more self-reliant and independent, and we didn't need anything. Listen, this is why, generally speaking, government would love us all to live inside cities, because that's where we can be controlled, and that's where people generally think, well, that's where they generally go to government for the answers to things. That's why you have big cities like Portland and Salem and you know, those larger metropolitan areas up in the northern part of the state that control the rest of the state, because their politics is one way. They like the government to take care of everything for them. They like to look to government for everything, and the people outside of that are more self-reliant. And those are two different mindsets going on there.
Look, we're born, in many of us, in a hospital, in a box. Mm-hmm. I eat my dinners out of a box. I drive places in a box.
Yes.
I'm probably going to be buried in a box. Now, that's why skydiving was such a cool thing for me in my life, okay? But I don't do that now. But in this case, what our local, it's the local government. We have some control over this. What they're saying is, you cannot smoke that marijuana or this legal product outdoors. You have to stay in a box, right? And you're going to have to grow it in a box now. You cannot have access to free sunshine. The sunshine is free. How are we going to tax that? And so you're going to need to be boxed in by them. I don't want to be boxed in by these characters, especially not by these guys.
Yeah, it's going to be a legal issue. Just gonna. Hey, I mean, is there any more to be gleaned?
Out of the box thinking, brother.
Okay. Is there any more to be gleaned from this meeting here? Or
I've got probably 18 more minutes of this kind of stuff, but you get the main point here. Is these? So they're boy, oh boy, they're going to talk about it, and they're going to do as much as they. Well, some of this will have to be an executive session. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, why does some of it need to be discussed in a secret session? Oh, it's not secret. It's just not available to anybody. You mean the same kind of executive sessions where you were breaking the law? We weren't breaking the law. We were sort of, well, yeah, right.
You know what? I mean, considering the experience that we've had with Simon and Cheryl, um, you have to ask yourself, how does this benefit them?
Ah. Well,
It,
Cheryl never
you
met an
know,
order that she didn't like or didn't wish that she started, for one.
well, and I could see where this would eliminate part of the problem with people complaining about their marijuana being degraded by her hemp. If all
Yes.
of them have to be in greenhouses and she doesn't have to be in a greenhouse, that takes care of the whole problem for her.
Free sunshine. Free
Right.
sunshine. Free.
Yeah.
Provided only by God. Right?
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. Well, they're the only ones that'll get it. Everyone else will have to make some kind of deal with, I don't know, somebody like Darren Fowler, who will certainly be happy to install a system of lights for you in a place that gets, well, maybe not a lot of sunshine today, but in general, there's enough sunshine to grow things here. Grape growers, how would the grape growers feel if all of their grapes had to be grown indoors?
It wouldn't happen.
No.
It wouldn't happen, and wine would be extremely expensive. It just generally speaking would not happen.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a bugaboo. I would say, you know what? Those little, plant scientists who work on this kind of stuff, botanists, are going to have to get to work and deal with. It may well be though that the elements that make the marijuana potent are just naturally stinky, and there's not much you can do about mitigating that. I really don't know.
Babies, just like babies, what are you going to do? Come with a new kind of baby?
Yeah. Yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah, our scientists hard at work. Oh, there's the area of society that we could trust. Science. Right. Well, maybe the Chinese will come up with something.
Mm-hmm.